Lady yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very interesting. As a parent of 5 children, I think having my rights as a parent is a very sacred trust, a very sacred trust. But Mr. Williams, would you say that having worked as a prosecutor, threats of violence against individuals is something that supersedes an individual simply being a parent?
Of course, Madam Ranking Member, threats of violence are actionable under the law. When they come, prosecutors can investigate, or the FBI or any other investigative agency can investigate them and prosecute as appropriate.
Sure. This one-page DOJ memo that we've made much ado about says in its first instance that the First Amendment protected activity should never be subject to prosecution, and issues a concern to illegal violence and threats of violence that are made to school board officials, most of whom are, surprise, surprise, parents, volunteers who do the unenviable job of trying to direct their children and their communities' activities with regard to education, a job most of us, thankfully, have not had to do. And I'm also troubled, I'm deeply troubled by all of the events, as well as the increase in violence and threats of violence against civil servants and federal law enforcement as we attempt to weaponize these individuals doing their job. In fact, we've seen the consequences of this rhetoric over and over again. I'm also deeply troubled by the idea of Congress, as I said in my opening statement, using oversight as a weapon to air a list of political grievances. We seem to hear much of that from the first panel, especially. I've been a member of the House Oversight Committee, where I saw firsthand how good oversight can help Congress make better public policy. Mr. Williams, you've worked in both Congress and the executive branch. Do you agree with me that oversight of the federal government is an important legislative process?
Absolutely. As Representative Raskin said at the first panel, the Constitution doesn't explicitly lay out an oversight mandate, but the legislative mandate of Congress provides Congress with its ability to engage in oversight. Oversight is good when it helps the government work better.
Thank you. Do you agree that congressional oversight is at its best when it's focused on addressing the real problems that Americans face on every day?
The real problems Americans face every day and making government work better, absolutely, Congresswoman.
I believe in congressional oversight, and committee Democrats would be willing to work together to conduct oversight of matters such as the disproportionate audits by the IRS of African-American families. Recent reports about former Attorney General Bill Barr and Special Counsel John Durham. Mr. Williams, do you agree that congressional oversight works best when it's bipartisan in nature?
Absolutely.
And have you seen examples of that in bipartisan investigations?
Oh, absolutely.
I know that it's so infrequent now, but have you ever seen any?
Absolutely. A great example is in 2016 when the House Committee on Oversight, led by Republican Chairman Jason Chaffetz and Ranking Member Elijah Cummings, worked together on an investigation, a bipartisan investigation of the United States Secret Service and mismanagement and misbehavior there. It led to bipartisan legislation that made, as I said, the government work better and Secret Service a more functional organization.
What about cooperation between the branches of government? Is it necessary for Congress to be willing to work with the executive branch in investigations?
Yes, and vice versa. Absolutely. The executive branch should be willing to work with Congress as well.
And would that first instance be trying to come to agreement as to when and how documents and information could be given?
Absolutely. The public sees hearings, but does not see that when the process works properly, there's a back and forth and a give and take between the two parties at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, as I said before.
Would you say 2 weeks into the Congress issuing subpoenas might be a bit premature for the investigation and cooperation between those branches of government?
Certainly, Congressman, Congress has the authority to issue subpoenas quickly if they wish, but I guess you get more flies with honey than with vinegar, to be cute. And working with the other side collaboratively is always going to be a better approach.
Vinegar seems to work better on social media, though, than the honey. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. I would just point out we tried the honey. 100 letters we sent in the last Congress. We tried the honey.
The last
honey-
Congress,
the
you're
hun-
now
the honey,
the chair.
The honey didn't work.
You're
That's
now
why
in
we
the
sent
majority. You
subpoenas.
should have tried that first as the chair of this committee, not as the ranking member.
We tried. We
You didn't
tried
do
with
that as
100 and some
chairman.
letters.
You didn't.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady